The classroom buzzed with the usual chatter as students shuffled in. Notebooks half filled, minds already halfway out the door. Of mostly young adult learners, one figure stood out: an older woman, probably in her mid-40s, dressed in a plain, faded shalwar kameez. Her scarf carefully pinned, her hands calloused from years of labor. She sat quietly at the last desk in the corner, clutching a small notebook that had more wrinkles than pages. The teacher, a sharp-tongued man known for his sarcasm and quick wit, walked in with his usual swagger. He dropped his worn leather bag on the desk and scanned the room with tired eyes before landing on her. A slight smirk curved his lips as he picked up a piece of chalk and, with exaggerated flair, wrote a long, complex calculus equation on the blackboard. The kind of problem that makes even engineering students sweat. He turned around dramatically, scanning the room again. Who wants to try this? He said, raising an eyebrow. One even whispered, "She probably doesn't even know what X means." The woman looked up slowly, blinking in confusion. For a brief moment, she hesitated. Her fingers trembled around the notebook. She could feel dozens of eyes drilling into her, most of them expecting a cinna joke. But instead of shrinking, she stood up quietly, not defiantly, not boldly. Just, with a strange sort of calm, she walked slowly toward the blackboard, every step echoing louder than the laughter had. She stood frozen for a moment, chalk in hand, eyes scanning the twisting symbols and numbers that sprawled across the board. The silence in the room deepened, every student waiting for her to embarrass herself. In her face, her heart pounding so loud it filled her ears. Taking a slow breath, she tightened her grip on the chalk. Her mind began recalling nights under a dim bulb, reading her son's textbooks in secret, sounding out the words, working problems again and again, until the logic felt like poetry. She lowered the chalk to the board and began to write, carefully, deliberately. The first line was simpler, basic rearrangement of the equation. A couple of students frowned. She didn't look at them. Her hand moved steadily, breaking down terms, taking a derivative here, applying a rule there. The teacher's arms crossed over his chest, smirk wavering as he leaned forward slightly. The sound of chalk scratching was the only thing in the room. A cough came from the back, but no one laughed now. Eyes tracked her slow progress as lines of reasoning appeared clear and orderly. She paused once, eyes flicking to the top corner, thinking, then nodding faintly to herself. More steps followed, clean and logical. Even those who didn't understand calculus could see her work wasn't random scribbles. She was solving it, step by step, methodically, like someone who wasn't showing off, but just knew. By the time she reached the last transformation, the entire class was silent. Woman, write out something he hadn't expected her to even attempt. She set the chalk down gently on the ledge and stepped back, wiping her slightly trembling hands on her dupatta. The entire board was filled now with precise, deliberate steps, transformation clearly leading to the next. At the bottom, neatly boxed in, sat the correct final answer, unmistakable in its simplicity. A hush settled like a heavy blanket over the room. No one moved. But there wasn't one. He ran a hand through his hair, clearing his throat awkwardly, trying to maintain some authority. The students, previously smirking and whispering, now sat rigid in their chairs. Wide-eyed someone in the back finally whispered, "Is that right?" The teacher swallowed hard before answering, voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Yes, it's completely correct." A stunned exhale rippled through the class. She hadn't come here to prove anything. She wasn't trying to be clever or embarrass anyone, she just knew how to solve it. Understand the math, felt the weight of the moment. The teacher finally turned to face her fully, his voice cracking slightly as he asked, "How? How did you learn this?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I didn't understand at first, but I kept trying." A hush fell over the room. The students who had laughed before now looked away, ashamed. "You taught yourself calculus?" he asked quietly. She looked startled, tears welling in her eyes, offering a small The applause finally quieted. But the room remained charged with something different. No longer embarrassment or mockery, but admiration. The teacher stepped forward, slower than usual, the authority in his posture replaced by humility. For a few seconds he simply stood there, facing the woman, his eyes searching hers. Then he did something that no one expected. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice steady but softer than it had ever been. "I thought I was being clever. I thought I was teaching a lesson, maybe even making a joke. Not loud, not arrogant, not covered in degrees, but quiet, persistent, and patient. Asterisk, a few students nodded, visibly moved. One of them raised a hand and asked, "Miss, would you help me understand that last part of the equation? I didn't get it even after 3 tries." Laughter bubbled up, kind, not cruel. The woman smiled, unsure how to respond. He looked at her again. "And if you're willing, I'd like to help you continue your education. You clearly don't belong at the back of this class. You belong at the front." All she wanted was to sit quietly and learn, to understand the things that once felt so far out of reach. And now here she was, being offered a future she'd never dared to imagine. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away, nodding slightly in acceptance. Asterisk, the video would later show her standing in front of the chalkboard as the teacher offered her a chair beside his desk, a symbolic gesture that said everything. One of the students snapped a photo. The woman in her modest clothes, standing proudly, a faint smile on her face, in front of a board filled with perfect logic and elegant math. Asterisk, that image would go viral online, labeled simply, "Wisdom has no age, and genius has no costume."